Hello, thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. I'm your host, Paul, and I'm an alcoholic. Today's date is February 11th, 2025, and this is episode 11. And it's kind of cool. I never thought we've been doing this now for about 2 months, and it's been cool. This is 11 episodes in 2 months. We've been rolling with this thing, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Also, all the feedback we've been getting. Our email address is recoveryrecording615@yahoo.com. Also, a lot of the feedback that's on the YouTube channel, the comments and the links and all that, greatly appreciated. Keep them coming. If you have any suggestions or any topics or maybe speakers that you'd like to have on the show, we'd love to hear from all y'all. And today we are continuing with, we're doing steps 6 and 7 with Chris S. from New Jersey. How's it going, Chris?
It's going great, Paul. It's going great. How are things in Tennessee?
Things are great, man. Things are good, man. We've been super busy. It's been raining all day here today, which is, no fun, but it is what it is, yeah. How about New Jersey?
We're supposed to get a little bit of snow. Not much, maybe an inch or two, but
wow.
We're pretty used to it by now.
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy of mine that lives up there about a week ago, and he said that it was about 30-something degrees and about to have snow. And so here in Tennessee, you never know. Last week we were up in the 50s and 60s, and now it's back in the 30s, 40s. So you never know here. Yeah.
We've had a really cold February. It's been below freezing probably more days than not. And when it gets down to like 20 degrees, that's cold for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, man. So today we're doing 6 and 7. This is for those that are just tuning in. We have Chris this is our, I think it's 6th. Yeah, this is our 6th episode. We're calling this an adequate presentation of the steps, a guide for sponsorship. It's for someone that's, just getting into sponsorship or wanting to, touch up on just a cool tool to have for someone that's taking a prospect through the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous. Just been a great tool. And I've had a lot of good feedback, Chris. Have you heard anybody say anything about the episodes yet?
No, I've sent it around to some friends. Yeah. And they said that they liked it, but I haven't looked at any of the comments or emails or anything like that yet.
Yeah.
We'll take a good look at it, Don, and and see if there's going to be some people out there that are going to find it helpful. I do really want to preface that I'm sharing my experience. I'm sharing, the way I would take somebody through the steps. I don't mean it to be a definitive.
Sure.
I don't want people to think that if they're doing it a little different or whatever, that there's a problem with that. I think we all have experience, and how we really gain experience is we gain experience by working with other people, and that informs our future sponsorship or our future as guides through spiritual progress. And I've got my set of experiences, and they kind of color how I speak to a lot of this stuff. And I hope it's helpful. I hope it's helpful for some people.
Yeah, I found it extremely helpful. I've learned quite a bit just during this whole process. Let me ask you a question. What about currently in sponsorship? Do you still work with new guys, new guys in the book, or how does that work?
So not as often. You got to understand that I'm in a small town. I really do try to carry the message into treatment centers and I'm working with newer guys in that way, but as far as bringing somebody over to my house and taking them through the work. Uh, my heyday for that was the '90s and the thousands.
Nice.
During that period of time, I probably had people at my house 3 times a week
Wow.
going through the steps, whether with groups of them or on their own. And as I gained more and more time, I think I became more and more attractive to people who are looking for maybe a deeper experience, or they're looking for a sponsor who can guide them in additional spiritual practices or something like that. I don't see myself as being attractive to the brand new guy right now. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And that also has a lot to do with my location. But do I shy away from it if it rears its head? No. I've got no problem working with somebody that can work with me. They have to be able to get to my house. It has to be during the periods of time where I have available. I've tried a lot of phone sponsorship, and I do sponsor a lot of people around the country in probably 5 different countries.
Wow.
And we have like a phone relationship, but I'm not actively taking them through the steps for the first time on the phone.
Sure.
I found that that's very, very difficult for at least me to do. So that's a little bit about my current sponsoring experience.
Yeah, nice. How about and that's just so the listeners could get an idea. You've been doing podcasts and also workshops and stuff like this for how many years now? You've had quite an experience with all this, correct?
Yeah, I started doing. It's funny. I started doing workshops in my house somewhere around 1993.
Wow.
In 1997, here's a story for you. In 1997, I was bringing people over to my house and I was taking them through the steps. And you got to understand, the area that I was in New Jersey, people were not doing that. If you asked somebody to sponsor them, they would basically do a couple things. If they were a good sponsor, they would be really, really interested in consistent meeting attendance. You know what I mean? And they'd try to teach you how to be a decent AA fellowship member.
Yeah.
If you had a really good sponsor, they would be paying attention to your meeting attendance and try to get you involved in service, like making coffee, anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So that was what sponsorship looked like in the early '90s and late '80s when I got sober. It was closer to a group therapy experience than it was a recovery program related relationship.
Yeah.
So anyway, I started to take people through the steps at my house, and in 1997, what had happened was there was a relapse. This guy's name was T. God love him. He was a relapser. You know what I mean? It was heroin, it was booze, wow. It was just a mess. Yeah. And I kept working with him. I really liked him, so I kept working with him. And finally, I convinced him that he needs to go through the steps, and he needs to do them all. And he had about 93 amends to do on his cards, and he did about 92 of them. There was one that he was really struggling with, but anyway, he had a full-blown spiritual experience. Now, a person he was friends with was a priest at a local church, and he watched this guy's transformation, and it was a fairly quick transformation. I mean, he went through the steps in a matter of a month or something, right? And he saw this guy go from just a bumbling relapser to somebody whose eyes were wide open, and he was all about the business. There was a significant change, and the priest goes, what happened to you? The priest was in recovery too.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I went to the steps with this guy, Chris. It was amazing. And you know what the priest said?
What's that?
He goes, tell me how I can find him. This was like a county away where he saw the priest. And so the priest comes to the next meeting I'm at, that I'm speaking at. He hears me speak, and he comes up to me after the meeting and he goes, listen, I want you, I want you to be doing what you're doing in your house, taking people through the steps. I want you to do that at my church.
Wow.
I'm going to give you a room a night. Don't worry about rent while you're getting the thing up off the ground. I want this to be I want this to be included in my. This is part of my mission statement. You know, so I did that. I very reluctantly I started this group in Burnsville, New Jersey, and what it was it was a big book presentation meeting. So much like we're doing tonight, Paul, but I would go through every word and I would break down everything that needed to be broken down in the book and basically teach people what's in the book, what and the transformational experience that can be gained from actually paying attention to the instructions in the book. And it took about a year for this meeting to really kick off. But by the end of 2 years, there were people coming from 4 different states to this meeting. It was different. It really was, I think, the first of its kind. There were big book meetings.
Yeah.
There were big book meetings where they would read from the first page all the way through every story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there wasn't something that was focused on trying to, transmit the information in a way that it could be experienced by somebody.
Yeah.
And we did that, and there was a person who asked me if he would mind recording it. I said no. If you want to record it, you can. A little cassette recorder, about the size of a wallet.
Nice.
And he started to record it, and then he started to send the tapes around, and a taper. Glenn Kay got a hold of them, and we started to communicate. I did a workshop at the Wilson House that year. Glenn taped it. Glenn taped a couple of one-day workshops, and these tapes started to go all over the place. And that's really how I became involved in these workshops. And it's almost 30 years later, and I'm still doing them. And it's a lot more fun than it sounds. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're reading that in that same book. How many years now? How long does it take you? To learn. It's a lot more fun than it sounds. That's all I can tell you.
Purpose, right? It gives you a purpose, man. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Glenn Kay, this is the second time we've talked about him on the podcast. Shout out to Glenn. I would love to. I'm pretty sure he's still around, right? I don't know if he's still recording or anything.
He's outside of Greenville a little ways.
Yeah.
I'll shoot you his contact information.
Sure.
I'm sure he would love to talk to you.
I would love to talk to him, man. That'd be awesome. Yeah, him. It'd just be cool to hear some old stories. Plus, maybe have him on the show. And just hear because what inspired me to do a lot of this stuff is guys like him and you, honestly, that over the years, just tapes, old tapes and all those old recordings, like you already talked about Mark Houston and Joe Hawk that he went around and recorded. All that stuff's really shaped my recovery in so many different ways. It gave me the enthusiasm, like what we were talking about, the little pockets of enthusiasm to to keep going with this stuff, and it's just changed me in so many different ways, and so many other people too. It's that's good stuff, man. It gives you a purpose.
There was a period of time, Paul, where I was listening to 4 hours a day recovery speakers. I had the kind of job where I could wear a Walkman, and sometimes more than that, and it really informed my understanding of recovery, enthused me into really being a part of this thing. And I learned a lot of things from the experience of other people.
Sure.
Absolutely. I think it's really important. Here's the thing about Glenn. Glenn has a little Zoom meeting. Mm-hmm. I swear there's maybe 12 people on it. But because he was a taper, he has the contact of every great speaker in the English-speaking language. So once a week, you have an incredible speaker on, and there's like 10 people in the meeting. You
Wow.
know, I'll try ask him to send you that Zoom link because
Sure.
we should probably promote that or something,
Amen.
on your YouTube site.
Amen. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Also, I'm sure he's got just so many like people. He's got that contact to all kinds of different people. That would just be great to just another way to share it with the world, right? On here.
Let me put it this way: he taped Joe and Charlie 50 times.
That's crazy, man. That is crazy.
He just went around the country taping them.
That's so cool.
And
Yeah.
so somebody like that has got some really, really deep understanding of this thing called recovery.
And the crazy part is absolutely, and also like at the time, I would imagine there really wasn't a lot of taper stuff going on. Like I think then it was probably when it really started getting, that kind of took it off, kind of took off from that, from those talks probably, right? Maybe Joe and Charlie back in the day, but even that, it really wasn't on fire like it was with Mark and them, right? I mean,
how I discovered the recorded message was somebody gave me some Joe and Charlie tapes, but that started something. I went to a bookstore and they had self-help tapes, and I found a set of Clancy. This is really rare. Clancy going through the 12 steps. That's not something he would do.
wow.
And the Palo Alto retreat, in like 1978 or something, he went through the 12 steps, and that was on a 4-tape set. I got that. That got me searching.
Nice.
And somehow I found a catalog. There was a tape company called Encore Tapes out of California, and it was Encore Tapes taped everybody in Southern California, and I started ordering. At least once a month, I would order a box of tapes from Encore,
Wow.
and they had little 4-star ratings or whatever, or very funny, or great talk, and I would go after those, and I discovered all of our grand masters of the microphone.
Wow.
I discovered them all
That's
in
cool.
the early '90s just
Wow.
by being obsessive compulsive and going after them all.
Sure. Yeah.
And here's, before we get going, here's the last thing I want to share about that. Beginning, I was interested in the talks that were, for want of a better term, performance talks. What is these people would go and they would tell their story, and they had their story down to such a point it was memorized,
Yeah.
and every funny line and every joke, and it ended up all being the same. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And those are great talks to hear, because you walk out of there feeling like, wow, that was something. What a great talk.
Yeah.
And those were the ones I was listening to mainly in the beginning. Slowly, my taste shifted toward the Mark Houstons, the Joe Hawks, the Sandy Beaches, the people that were going deep, and they were emphasizing recovery processes and principles. Yeah. And every single one of their talks had a lot of different stuff in it. It wasn't a canned thing. Even Joe and Charlie were canned. I mean, you hear one of their seminars, you're going to 10 years later, you listen to another one, and it's the same thing. Sure. I was looking for the people where I could actually judge their spiritual progress.
Nice.
And they were all of them basically out of the Denver area.
Sure.
They came from Don Pritz and people like that. Yeah. And so that's where I ended up, because I wanted more than just I wanted more than just dinner and a show. I wanted something maybe deep and transformational. And so that was just my evolution with the recorded media.
That's great. It's cool. It's funny you said that it came from the Denver area, and Don P was you had turned me on to Judith L. From that same era. Actually, I spoke with her that night. She's in Italy right now, and she's getting back. So the podcast, we're full until probably late April. We're all booked up until then, but I got her scheduled for looks like late April to at least do one episode. Good. So yeah, maybe more. Good. So
Judy is a national treasure. She isn't somebody that speaks at conventions every week or anything, right? Mm-hmm. But I met her when I was living out in Colorado, and she was doing her job at a meeting.
Nice.
I'm brand new out there. I'm looking for meetings, and I saw in the meeting book Saturday Night Jive. It was called in Boulder, Colorado.
Huh.
And I said to my wife, "Hey, let's go to Boulder. Let's have dinner and let's check out that meeting."
Yeah.
And so we did. And Judy and her husband Lou were doing their job. They were standing by the door greeting everybody. And I got to tell you, when you meet somebody and almost immediately you're going to be linked for life.
Yeah.
It's rare, right? But that's what happened with us and Judy and Lou. We knew
awesome.
we were going to be desperate friends the rest of our lives.
That's
and
awesome.
it was because we're in the fellowship of the Spirit together.
Yeah.
We've experienced the spiritual awakening. We present with a spiritual an awakened spirit, and we recognize other people with awakened spirits.
Yeah.
And they're also wonderful and fun. So it's been a great friendship. I've done a lot of things with Judy and Lou over the years.
That's awesome, man. I'm super excited about it. Yeah, so that's so awesome. Yeah. Well, great, man. It's cool. It's just getting to learn a little bit more about your history, and super excited about this. I was thinking to myself with the steps in 6 and 7. Technically in the big book, there's only a couple paragraphs. So I'm just interested in seeing where we go with this, man.
Yeah, sure. So, like we always do, I'm just going to briefly recap up to step 6 and 7.
Yeah.
If you're working with somebody, your job is to help them convince themselves that they're alcoholic if they are alcoholic. And, sometimes that's a little harder than you would think. You know what I mean? Because there's delusion wrapped around everything. So what needs to be at basics, what needs to be convinced is that they can't control the amount of alcohol that they use. There are times where they can't control the amount. They get drunk, and that when they've made attempts in the past to separate from alcohol, they've been unsuccessful. So, and the reason for that is what they call powerless. We're powerless over alcohol. And what that means is we're powerless over choice and control. We're powerless whether we choose to put it in our bodies, and we're powerless over control once it's in. Yeah. And that's Custer's last stand, and there's more Indians coming. And if you can get them to that point where they're starting to understand that, you've made some progress.
Yeah.
And then it's important to talk about unmanageability. Just what the heck is unmanageability? Unmanageability is emotional. Unmanageability is spiritual. Unmanageability is mental. There is difficulty with this thing called life. And we are overcome with a toxic experience of self-consciousness that breeds resentment and anxiety and shame and guilt and every kind of negative emotion in the world, which makes us the best way to describe it is it takes away a true quality of life from somebody. How are you going to enjoy life when you're always mad and always nervous about things? It's just it makes it difficult. So that's a good vision of the unmanageability. On a good day, we're restless, irritable, and discontented. On a typical day, we're filled with anxiety and resentment and guilt and shame and remorse and we get angry really easy, and we're very overly sensitive. On a bad day, it's the hideous 4 horsemen: terror, frustration, bewilderment, despair. Yeah. And it's described really well as pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. So if you can share with somebody around your drinking and be able to get them to see that you might really know something about what they're going through, your job is to really help them get to a point where they can fully concede the information in step 1. And if you do that, the rest of the steps are going to fall into place. Nice. Step 2 is we have a solution. Can you now believe, or are you even willing to believe that there's a power greater than yourself that can solve your problem? And you can give examples if you're working with somebody that there's 2 million people sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's 200 12-step groups. The 12 steps are a vehicle of salvation for people caught up in addiction or obsessive compulsive disorder, and try to share your own experience in a way that will let them know that it's not a religious belief in God per se. It is a spiritual belief in God. And the difference is a religious belief in God has a lot of precepts, it has a lot of, specific beliefs that you agree to and all that. A spiritual belief in God is we believe in God when we experience God. Okay. Yeah. We have an experience with God. Sure. And do you believe that that's possible for you? It's been possible for us. Do you believe it's possible for you? Well, okay, yeah. All right, then step 3 is making a decision to place yourself in the correct environment for that spiritual process to happen. And that really is consistent meetings, working the steps with a sponsor spiritual advisor, and finding ways to be of service, to be part of this thing called recovery, the recovery experience. Are you willing to make a decision to do that? And if they say yes, you need to have a 4th step ready for them to fill out. And what you do is you go, look, selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of your trouble. Yourself will run riot. You probably don't believe it right now. You must be rid of that selfishness, or it will return you to drinking. It will kill you. So why don't we look at the most common manifestations of self and see what can be done about them? Number 1 is resentment. Number 2, they call it fear. Consider it fear/anxiety. Number 3 is sex conduct. Let's consider it sex conduct / conduct. We're going to inventory that stuff, and we're going to see what kind of mistakes, what kind of shortcomings you have in those areas. We're going to identify areas that need progress in that inventory, and you give them a date to have it done, because it's the first thing somebody's going to procrastinate on is step 4. Give them a date for step 5, and step 5 is to share everything they wrote, and there's also going to be some dirty little deeds. There's going to be some stuff that has to do with some of their conduct in the past, whether or not it landed on their inventory or not. They're being instructed to overturn every rock and every dirty little deed and share them. And we also need to assure them that this is confidential. It will go nowhere. We understand. We're not going to be surprised by anything, and that this is a life and death errand. Yeah. It's a life and death experience. So we hear the 5th step. We do the returning home. We find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, and we go into contemplation on the first 5 steps. Have we left anything out? Is there anything that we cheated on? Is there something we didn't share? And the book says, are our stones properly in place to build an arch? And if the person can honestly say, yes, I'm complete with the first 5 steps to the best of my ability, what you want to do is you want to show them about step 6 and about step 7.
Nice. Yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot. So far, so good, man.
Yeah. So okay, you have identified the things that are blocking you off from a successful life. You've identified the shortcomings, the obstacles in your path. You've identified them. You've shared about them. And step 5, step 6 is becoming willing to have these defects of character removed, Paul. And I don't think there's any better time in the world than after you've shared all this stuff. I was resentful at my mother. I was selfish. I was dishonest. I was had fear. You do that like 500 times in a row. I think it's a good time for someone to become to have these defects of character removed. And the book gives us a little leeway. It says if we're not, if we're not completely willing to have all of our defects of character removed, we ask for the willingness. So when it says we ask for the willingness, Paul, what that means is start praying for the willingness. That's what it says, I think Bill would have been more direct, but he had some guidance when he was putting this book together to soften it up.
Nice.
And that's how he did it. He said, this is what we did.
Yeah.
He doesn't say you have to. He says, this is what we did. It's a soft approach, but it means the same thing. You have to,
Yeah.
Yeah. So you become willing. And listen, there's some misunderstanding. I remember one guy coming up to me and saying, what about lust? What about lust? Am I willing to get rid of lust? If I get rid of lust, I may never get laid again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course that's not going to be part of the process. What we're going to be asking for, we're not going to be asking for the removal of our sex instinct. We're going to be asking for the removal of the character defects that cause harm when we're engaged in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, the party's not over when you get sober. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. We get to live finally, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Much better life.
Absolutely. So, I want to read this. I'm going to read, because it's only 2 paragraphs. I'm going to go ahead and read. It says, if we can answer to our satisfaction, what to our satisfaction? The questions in returning home. Okay? Have our stones been proper? Are they properly in place? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? What he's saying is, have we half measured this stuff?
Yeah.
Because half measures avail you what, Paul?
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you would think half measures would avail you half, but they don't. They avail nothing. You might as well not even start.
Yeah.
So our stone's properly in place.
Yeah.
We then look at step 6. We've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. I want to say this about step 6. So these 2 steps, there's 2 things that are true about them, Paul. One is you can do them in 5 minutes. That's true. The other is they'll take a lifetime to do.
Yeah.
And that's true too, right?
Yeah.
So this is just science. This is spirituality.
Yeah.
And it can be contradictory. Can you take these two steps in 5 minutes? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But are there periods of time where you're going to have to engage in willingness again? Sure. Paul, you have to be willing to concede your innermost self you're an alcoholic. You have to be willing to believe that there's a power greater than yourself that can solve your problem. You have to be willing to take the 3rd step. You have to be willing to do an inventory.
Yeah.
Willing to take the 5th step. Willingness is indispensable in that. So step 6 really is about willingness, and we're going to need to engage in that willingness in different ways for the rest of our lives as it concerns recovery.
Yeah.
What happens when you and I get 20 years, we get 30 years, and there's a series on Netflix, and do we really need to go to that meeting? We're gonna have to dig deep and engage in that willingness.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we need to go to that meeting. Yes, we need to call that sponsee back. Yes, yeah. we need to take that commitment that we've been asked to take. Mm-hmm. So willingness is going to be indispensable. Yeah. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we've admitted are objectionable? That's pretty easy. My behavior that was objectionable, I didn't want to have. Yeah. Can he now take them all? Every one. If we still cling to something and will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. So that's step 6. I've said this before, Paul. There's an economy to this step work, and I have seen so many step guides. Right, like when I first got sober, there was the Hazelton step. There was all these different step guides, the codependent step guide, and they were all being passed around the meetings. And they all had questions that you had to answer that aren't in this book, and they all complicated things. Like it was more therapeutic than it was spiritual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the real truth about this is there's an economy to the steps in this book. They are drastic, but they're not complicated.
No. So simple.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love this. I'll tell you, let me add something right here. I love that set where it says, "Are we now ready to let God remove let's remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable." Like when that sentence right there really hit me, I was at this place in life where, like, there was a lot of people around me that was BSing as far as like that was co-signing like my BS, and like I hadn't really went through a 4-step as far as like to discover the truth about stock and trade, right? So I was lying to myself about a lot of stuff. And after I really went through that process, I started seeing like, holy crap, man, this is definitely causing issues in my life, And that was completely different versus, if I don't find something that's going on in my life objectionable, I'm not really, why would I even want to even consider getting rid of it, right? Or trying to, go to God with it, right?
We've fallen in love with some of our characters.
Sure.
We think that they make us unique characters or something, right? But the defects of character they're talking about here aren't those. The defects of character they're talking about here are harmful.
Yeah.
They're harmful to ourselves and they're harmful to other people.
Yeah.
And that that's really what they're looking at here. Yeah. And you talked a little bit about lying to yourself. Here's how I see that. We all do it. Here's how I see it. All right. Everybody's like, denial is not a river in Egypt. You hear that all, right?
Yeah.
No, we don't have denial.
No.
What denial is, Paul, you and I are not talking on a phone right now.
Yeah.
Knowing we're talking on the phone, we're just going to say we aren't.
Sure.
We're not on a phone, right?
Yeah.
That's denial.
Yeah.
Delusion is neither one of us believes we are talking on the phone right now.
Yeah.
That's what delusion is.
Yeah.
And what we have delusion.
Sure.
And we need to wake up. We need to wake up. And what that is that's a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
We need to wake up. Yeah. And we need to see things as they really are. And the first exercise to seeing reality is this step 4.
Yeah.
Because we are looking at it from a different angle.
Absolutely.
And it tells us we have to set aside the wrongs others have done and resolutely look at our own mistakes. Yeah. Where have we been at fault? So where have we been at fault? We never wanted to look there. No. If it was our fault, Paul, it would be inconvenient.
There's a lot of freedom within that,
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Because if it's always not your fault, you're never going to get any better.
That's it.
Yeah. Why bother changing?
Yeah.
So we wake up, and the spiritual awakening really is it's seeing things as they really are, and we continue to wake up. It's not necessarily like flipping a light switch. We come to different revelations every day, and a deeper understanding of this thing called life every day, and a deeper insight into our character and our behavior and our thinking mind every day. And that's constructive. We were destructive when we were drinking. Nothing was ever our fault, and we were drinking like causing all kinds of trouble, and nothing was ever our fault. That's a recipe for disaster. So we've done the self-examination. We've become willing to have these things that we find objectionable removed. Let's look at step 7.
Yeah.
All right. When we're ready, we said something like this: "My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen." Now let's break that down. This is a very selfless prayer. This is not, "God, please, make my life awesome so I get all the babes." It's not a prayer like that. This is about, "God, make me a better kid and make me helpful to the rest of your kids. Yeah. Make me a better brother." So I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Why does he say good and bad? This is what I believe, Paul. I believe that when I came in, some of the things I thought were good were bad. And some of the things I thought were bad were actually good.
True.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like somebody agreeing with me all the time was good, right? No, it really wasn't, because I wasn't being held accountable. I was just being shined on.
Yeah.
Somebody correcting me, in my behavior or my ideas, that was bad, right? I don't like people criticizing me.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I need to be open to new insights into different things, and I need your help pointing some things out.
Yeah.
So the things that I would be willing to give up that were bad might have been good, and the things that I'm not going to bother God with because they're good might be bad. So he's saying good and bad.
Yeah.
I'm now willing that you should have all of me. I pray now that you remove from me every single defect character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Those are the character defects we're asking to be removed.
Yeah.
The things that block us off from being useful.
Yeah.
Like it's not like God, God, please relieve me of my obsessive nail biting or something. He's not going to bother with that.
Yeah.
What he's going to do is he's going to slowly take away the defects of character that keep you from being a channel,
Amen.
a spiritual channel.
Amen.
And that's my experience, Paul.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, go ahead.
Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Grant me strength. I'm going to need strength. I'm going to need power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I'd been reading this prayer for a while. I always thought it just said, get rid of my character defects. Now it's saying the usefulness to you and my fellows, right? And which is huge, which is, if you go over to the next page on 77, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and the people about us, right? And that's what this whole thing's about, is, the spirit of service.
It is. Yeah. Now, I want to emphasize this last sentence. It says this: we have then completed step 7, period, end of sentence. Okay? That's the simplicity of this. I didn't get with that for years, Paul. I was reading the 12 steps and 12 traditions. I was getting, character defects for dummies. I was going to camp. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was going to camp, working on my character defects, Well, you don't work on your character defects. Yeah. That's a therapeutic response to life. This is a spiritual response to life. It's going to be God's job. You understand? Yeah. Now, if we just hover around, working on our character defects, we're going to be wasting precious time because of this fact. The next indicated step, right after you complete step 7, is to put a list of the people and the institutions together that you've caused harm to. That's the next exercise. And I want to tell one story that will emphasize why I believe this is the flow that needs to happen. Okay. All right, I was sponsoring this guy. God, I loved him. He grew up, Paul, in, you ever see the show The Sopranos? Yeah. I mean, he had the house next door to Tony. You know what I mean? And it was just a brutal, murderous, kind of upbringing. Wow. If he wasn't in a fight a week somewhere, this guy was beat up when he showed up in AA. And I ended up working with him. He and a lot of the crazy people were attracted to me for some reason. Well, back in the 90s, and I got them all. Maybe it's the tugboat, giving off the most steam, pulls the boats. I don't know, but anyway, he was rough, and we're going through the steps together, and he's compliant, man. He's compliant to the best of his ability. He's freaking compliant. He can barely read and write, but he's doing what I tell him to do. Nice. And he's where I tell him to be, and he is doing his job And one day we stop in a convenience store because we know who the coffee maker is before the meeting. So we're going to get a coffee before we get to the meeting.
Yeah.
And as we're walking out of the meeting, I see him move his right hand fast and grab something and put it in his pocket, and boom, we're out the door.
Mm.
And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Did I just see you steal a pack of cigarettes?
Mm.
Because there was they were up there in the front, and he goes, no. I go, let me rephrase this. Did you grab a pack of cigarettes without paying for them? And he goes, yeah. I go, well, then you stole a pack of cigarettes. He goes, no, that was the rack in the front. You're a chump if you don't take those. They budget for that. And I'm like, whoa. Sponsor summit. And after I got done explaining to him a little bit about property exchange, he was on his A step. And you know what he did? He put a list of at least 20 stores where he'd been stealing like that since he was a little boy.
Wow.
And he was doing good. He was a mason contractor. He was cashed up.
Hmm.
So what he did was he put these big fat envelopes together, like 20 of them, and he went back to every single convenience store, and he approached the manager. And he said, I'm here to make amends. I stole things over the years. I'm trying to make things right. I estimate that I took like $700 worth of stuff from you over the year, and I'm trying to live a better life. I'm in recovery. I never want to drink again, and it's important for me to give you this envelope. And that's what he did with 20 convenience stores. Let me just ask you the question, Paul. Do you think he ever stole cigarettes again?
No. I highly doubt it.
Do you understand the correlation with step 8 and 9 and step 7?
Yeah, that makes sense.
We don't work on our character defects.
Yeah.
We become accountable for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's good stuff.
We become accountable for them.
That makes sense. All the sense in the world. I tell you, this is a conversation that, we went to the men's retreat a few weeks ago, and a buddy of mine, he went up to me, we were talking about, maybe we don't work on our character defects, but, I believe we are at least supposed to, it's interesting because just because I've made an amends doesn't necessarily I'm not going to make some of the character defects again, right? I mean, certain parts of my character that I don't know. When I think of me being self-centered to the extreme, although I realize I've caused harms with that, still doesn't necessarily I'm going to be not going to be so self-centered, right? It may, I at least try to tend to lean in the direction of, all right, God, I need some help, leaning towards God. Does that make sense? I mean,
we claim spiritual progress.
Yeah.
Paul. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And there are still uses. God still has some uses for some of your character defects. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I will say this: He's certainly removed the things that have blocked you off from being useful. Yeah. Look what you're doing right now.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah. And the stealing and all that. Yeah, for sure.
I think I'll put a podcast out and get it on as many platforms as I can, so that I can share the message of recovery.
Yeah, sure.
That's eminently useful.
100 times different than what it was. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So God did that for you.
Yeah.
Those defects of character were removed. Yeah. We have then completed step 7. Period. End of sentence. That's awesome. And why do we go to God with this stuff, Paul? Why do we go to God with this stuff? Why isn't there like a college course on it or something? Yeah. We go to God. We go to God because haven't you tried? Yeah. Aren't there some things in your life that you found objectionable that you kept doing over and over again?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Haven't you disappointed people over and over again? I know I told you I'd never do that again. I know I told you I wouldn't do that. I'm sorry. You know. Yeah. Hasn't that been part of your life?
It goes back to the powerlessness.
Why do we go to God, Paul?
Yeah,
Paul, why do we go to God?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else.
That's it.
That's why.
Yeah. And another thing is that when I started seeing this stuff, for the first time, and I was years in recovery, I had people talking to me about the self-centeredness, and I really didn't know that, I still often wonder how unconscious, at what degree of unconsciousness am I when it comes to the selfishness and self-centeredness, right? But when I started seeing this stuff, I really started seeing how, like, I can't stop, when I really started doing nightly reviews on a regular basis, I started seeing how, like, man, I am a selfish, self-centered person, and I can't stop it, right? I have to have some kind of, I have to have God. I'm powerless over it, right? That's where me and God started really getting tight through this whole process, really.
I could understand that.
Yeah, I mean,
I could understand that. So I would say, stop working on your character defects and start becoming accountable for them.
Yeah.
So where they
awesome.
Raise their ugly head and cause harm, make amends.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
And continue to do that as many times as it takes.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah.
And another thing is a lot of it has to do with during the whole process becoming just the awareness of it, that through the 8 and 9 and then 10 is just like it's starting to become more and more aware of it. And it seems like as we deepen the process as far as 8 and 9, the 10 really starts to get deeper and deeper and deeper, right? It's like, oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Right?
Oh, step 10 and 11 are 1,000 miles deep.
Yeah. It's crazy, yeah. Man, this has been great, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, and there's a couple parts in the 12 and 12 too, as far as with 6 and 7 that I really love. He really did. In 12 and 12, he did some really good writings. But the simplicity of this, and especially that one line, "Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable?" And then also going into the 7th-step prayer where. I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. It's like that nails it right on the head right there, right? Like what is life all about? I mean, this is it, right?
Yeah. Listen, this is the best deal an alcoholic will ever have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
And it's sad that there are alcoholics that reject this.
It's crazy, man. Yeah, it's so sad. Yeah.
It is really sad.
It's purpose, it gives our life a purpose. I mean, imagine if honestly, I don't even know, knock on wood, hopefully it never happens to me. I don't know that I could stay sober or, and not like have this purpose-driven life like this. Honestly, like if I was just sitting around watching TV all the time, man, I would be freaking miserable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, if you're sitting around watching TV all the time, that's selfish.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would be freaking miserable.
We can't continue to be selfish and be happy.
No.
But
it's crazy. I know some people that seems like, they can kind of get away with a lot more than I can. And I just know I can't, right? It's just like, I don't see how that's possible.
It's not our dubious luxury, Paul.
Yeah. Amen.
We have a program that we must adhere to for our survival, but that's still the best deal we'll ever get.
Amen. And also, like it's. I remember when my grandparents used to talk about being grateful for being an alcoholic. Man, my life depends on a dependence of God, right? Other people don't necessarily have to have that to live a happy life. Maybe not, I don't know. But for me, I have to learn how to do this stuff, this design for a living that turns my life and my will over to Him, because I realize without it, this self is just going to make everything, horrible, horrible experience, It's just going to be exhausting,
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like what stood out for me when we were doing the third, I think when we were doing step 3, when you were talking about how like what we recover from, or, actually technically what it is, and I'm probably going to botch this, but you were saying, self is what we're recovering from, right? It's,
Yes.
The alcohol and stuff is, it's no longer in my life, so it's this whole, the many different ways self continues to manifest in my life that's causing the issue, right?
Yeah. So Bill examined this very, very deeply, and he got even into a little bit more depth in the 12 and 12. And there's an article he wrote on emotional sobriety. where he even gets even a little deeper. But what he recognized was he recognized that self was the condition. This toxic experience of self-consciousness was the condition that must be recovered from. And within that consciousness was the resentments and the fear and the anxiety and the shame and feelings of worthlessness, or all the emotional garbage that we suffer from. That the cause and condition of all that is what we must recover from. And he called it self-centeredness, egocentricity. He called it a number of things. But you count the amount of time self is in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. He's unapologetic. That is what our problem is.
Yeah. And right there he says we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failures. Being convinced self manifested in its various ways is what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And here's the thing, Paul. In step 5, we share those common manifestations. In step 6, we become willing to have those common manifestations removed. In step 7, we ask for them to be removed. In step 8, we put a list of where those common manifestations have harmed people. In step 9, we go out and we make amends for the expression of those manifestations. In step 10, we remain conscious of on a moment by moment basis of that. And in step 11, it teaches us how to avoid that by preparing for the day. And in step 12, we carry the message, the message of recovery. And it's from this point forward, we've identified the problem and we're applying step work to address those common manifestations.
Yeah, I like how you put that. It's great. Yeah. Man, this is awesome, man. I appreciate you. Next week, we're going to be doing step 8, huh? Yeah, I'm excited about that. Are we going to do 8 by itself, or 8 and 9, or how do you want to do that?
Let's kind of see how it goes. Okay. I like to break them up into specific spiritual disciplines, because they're 2 separate exercises. But it's very, very difficult sometimes to talk about 8, without stretching into 9. It's almost a given. But let's just see how it goes.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, great, Chris. I really appreciate you, buddy. And you have such a, you're good at this. You're great at this, man. I can relate to you in so many different ways. I like your approach with this whole matter too. So
I appreciate it, Paul, and I appreciate what you're doing. I'm not going to be putting podcasts together. That's not my thing. So we work well together.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Appreciate it.
Your gifts and my gifts are multiplying each other.
Appreciate you, man. Yeah, I agree. And speaking of, we have so we did last week. The KDP was on last week.
I listened to that. Wow, that was wonderful.
She did awesome. Yeah, she did a great job. And then tomorrow she's going to be doing, for all the listeners, tomorrow she will be doing step 3, which she does a wonderful job at. And super excited about that. Then I think that 2 weeks after that, we're going to be taking a break, me and her, and then we'll be connecting again a few weeks down the road. So yeah. And next week, for all the listeners, will be, February 18th. Me and you, Chris, will be coming back together to do step 8. And I appreciate you, buddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and send me that contact info for Glenn. I really want to reach out to him and get him on there.
I will.
Yeah.
You got it.
Appreciate you, buddy. And I will talk to you next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, man.
Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.